Do you remember the last time you felt truly bored? Not frustrated, not anxious, not restless, just empty. Unstimulated. Present with nothing but your own thoughts. You can't, can you? Because the moment discomfort arrives, your hand reaches for your phone. The second silence threatens to settle, you fill it with noise. When stillness tries to speak, you drown it out with the next episode, the next scroll, the next hit. You tell yourself you're burnt out, exhausted, that you need rest. But what if the opposite is true? What if you're not tired from too much effort, but sedated from too much pleasure? What if the fatigue crushing your soul isn't from overwork, but from a mind that never stops consuming? By the end of this video, you'll understand why the comfort you reach for is actually draining your life force, why every attempt to relax leaves you more depleted than before, and how a British author in 1932 predicted the exact trap you're living in right now. You're not burnt out, you're addicted. And Aldous Huxley saw it coming 90 years ago. We shall have a dictatorship without tears, a painless concentration camp for entire societies, where people will have their liberties taken away, but will enjoy it. In 1932, Aldous Huxley published a novel that would prove to be less fiction than prophecy. Brave New World wasn't about jackbooted oppression or violent control. It was about something far more insidious, a society controlled through pleasure. In Huxley's dystopia, citizens didn't need to be forced into compliance. They chose it. They lined up for it. They begged for more of it. The drug was called soma. A gram is better than a dam, they'd say. Whenever discomfort arose, whenever difficult emotions surfaced, whenever reality became too sharp to bear, there was soma. Instant relief, immediate comfort, perfect numbness. Sound familiar? Today, you don't need a government to distribute soma. You carry it in your pocket. It's delivered to your door. It streams directly into your eyes 24 hours a day. Your soma is that notification that pulls you away from difficult conversations. It's the series you binge when your thoughts get too heavy. It's the food you order when cooking feels like effort. It's the endless scroll when silence becomes unbearable. But here's what Huxley understood that most people miss. The problem wasn't that soma was addictive. The problem was that it worked too well. In Brave New World, citizens had access to every form of entertainment, every sensual pleasure, every possible distraction. What they lost wasn't their access to joy. They lost their capacity for it. The perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners do not even dream of escaping. You're living in that prison right now. The walls are invisible because they're made of comfort. The bars are undetectable because they're constructed from convenience. And you don't dream of escaping because the sedation feels like relief. Let me ask you something that might sting. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for 10 minutes without reaching for any form of stimulation? No music, no podcast, no phone, no book. Just you and your unfiltered thoughts. If you're honest, you probably can't remember, because somewhere along the way, you lost the ability to be with yourself without medication. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Pascal saw this coming 3 centuries before Huxley, but what he couldn't have predicted was how sophisticated our escape mechanisms would become. Watch your own behavior for one day. Really watch it. You're in the kitchen waiting for coffee to brew. You grab your phone. You're walking to your car. You put in earbuds. You're lying in bed before sleep. You need something playing. You're eating a meal. You need something to watch. Every pause, every gap, every moment of potential stillness gets immediately filled with input, as if silence itself were dangerous, as if being alone with your thoughts were a threat to be neutralized. This isn't entertainment anymore. This is compulsion. This is a systematic avoidance of any moment that might require you to actually feel what you're feeling. Most men and women will grow up to love their servitude and will never dream of revolution. You love your servitude because it doesn't feel like servitude. It feels like choice. It feels like freedom. It feels like self-care. But ask yourself, after 3 hours of scrolling, do you feel refreshed? After binging an entire season, do you feel satisfied? Or do you feel nothing? A kind of hollow fullness, the emotional equivalent of eating sugar, a brief spike followed by a crash that demands more sugar. You're not resting when you reach for these comforts, you're fleeing. And every escape makes the next return to yourself a little more unbearable. Here's something that might disturb you. You've forgotten how to want something deeply. I don't mean the shallow wanting that drives you to your phone every few minutes. I mean the kind of desire that once consumed you completely. The longing that made you willing to work for months, even years, towards something meaningful. When did you last feel that? Not the quick hit of, I want coffee or I want to see what's on Instagram, but the deep aching want that gave your life direction and purpose. It's gone, isn't it? Replaced by a constant low-level craving for the next hit of stimulation. This is what constant pleasure does to the human brain. It doesn't just satisfy desire, it destroys your capacity for it. When dopamine is always available, nothing feels worth the effort anymore. Your brain's reward system becomes desensitized to everything except the most immediate, intense stimulation. Think about it. When you can get instant gratification from your phone, why would you work for months on a creative project? When you can get immediate pleasure from streaming, why would you struggle through learning a difficult skill? A society of eternally distracted individuals is a society incapable of thought. Huxley wasn't warning about the absence of pleasure. He was warning about its abundance, about what happens when humans get everything they think they want, without having to become the kind of people capable of handling it. Joy requires contrast. Pleasure requires effort. Satisfaction requires struggle. When everything comes easily, nothing feels meaningful. Think about the last time you accomplished something difficult. Remember that feeling of earned satisfaction? That deep contentment that came not from consuming, but from creating? Now compare that to how you feel after your latest Netflix binge, or your most recent social media session. One filled you up. The others left you emptier than before. That's the difference between nourishment and sedation. But the cost goes deeper than just the loss of motivation. When you constantly flee from yourself, something more fundamental begins to erode, your sense of who you actually are. Identity doesn't emerge from consumption or entertainment or endless input from external sources. Identity emerges in moments of quiet reflection, in the spaces between stimulation, in the discomfort of actually feeling your own emotions without immediately medicating them away. Modern man lives under the illusion that he knows what he wants, while he actually wants what he is supposed to want. How many of your desires are actually yours? How many of your goals came from quiet self-reflection rather than external suggestion? How many of your dreams emerged from solitude rather than from what you consumed on social media? You might not know, because the self that could answer those questions has been gradually dissolved in a stream of constant input. Consider this. Most of your waking hours are spent consuming someone else's content, someone else's thoughts, someone else's emotions. You watch other people's lives on screens. You listen to other people's thoughts in podcasts. You absorb other people's curated experiences through social media. When do you have time to generate your own thoughts? When do you create space for your own emotions to emerge and be processed? The real hopeless victims of mental illness are to be found among those who appear to be most normal. They are normal not because they are free of problems, but because they are adjusted to a profoundly abnormal society. You think you're fine because everyone else is living the same way, constantly stimulated, perpetually distracted, always consuming, never creating, always taking in, never reflecting. But adjustment to an abnormal situation is not health, and what you've adjusted to is a life that never allows you to be alone with your own thoughts long enough to discover what those thoughts actually are. The self that could resist this system, the self that could choose differently, the self that could break free, that self needs quiet to emerge, and quiet is the one thing your current life never allows. Viktor Frankl observed something profound about human consciousness. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But what happens when that space is systematically eliminated? When every moment between stimulus and response is filled with another stimulus? You lose your power to choose. Not because it's taken from you by force, but because it atrophies from disuse. Right now, your life is a series of automatic responses. Phone buzzes, you look, you feel bored, you scroll, you feel restless, you consume, you feel empty, you fill it with content that leaves you emptier. There's no space for conscious choice because there's no space at all. Think of your mind like a snow globe. When it's constantly shaken by notifications, entertainment, consumption, stimulation, you can't see clearly. Everything is cloudy, chaotic, in motion. But when the globe sits still, the snow settles. Clarity emerges. You can see what's actually there. Your consciousness needs that stillness to function properly, not as a luxury, but as a biological necessity. Without it, you can't process experience, integrate learning, or access the deeper wisdom that emerges only in quiet. Without awareness, you become the perfect consumer. You don't question why you want what you want. You don't notice when your desires are being manufactured by external forces. You think you're choosing your entertainment, but algorithms are choosing it for you. You think you're managing your habits, but your devices are managing you. You think you're living your life, but corporate interests are living it for you. The most frightening part isn't that this is happening. It's that it feels completely normal. So how do you escape a prison made of pleasure? How do you break free from an addiction that masquerades as self-care? The answer isn't what the productivity gurus tell you. It's not about optimizing your habits or managing your time better. It's about something far more radical, reclaiming your capacity for discomfort. Because discomfort is where growth lives. Boredom is where creativity emerges. Silence is where you meet yourself again. The cure for overstimulation isn't better stimulation. It's the courage to face understimulation, to sit in the emptiness that your constant consumption has been trying to fill. Start simple. 1 hour of complete silence. No music, no podcasts, no audiobooks, no television, no internet, no phone. Just you and your thoughts. See what comes up when you stop drowning it out. You'll probably hate it at first. Your mind will scramble for something, anything to fill the void. You'll feel anxious, restless, even panicked. That scrambling is withdrawal. Those uncomfortable feelings that surface, they're not the problem. They're the cure. They're the emotional material you've been avoiding, the thoughts you've been drowning out, the parts of yourself that need attention, not sedation. The goal isn't to eliminate all pleasure from your life. It's to choose your pleasures consciously rather than being chosen by them, to reclaim the space between stimulus and response where your authentic self lives. There is only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that is your own self. But that improvement requires knowing who that self actually is, and you can't know that while you're constantly fleeing from it. The path out of the pleasure prison isn't about productivity or achievement. It's about stillness. It's about boredom. It's about the radical act of being present with your own unmedicated experience. It's about remembering that you are not what you consume. You are what remains when the consumption stops. You don't need more energy. You don't need another productivity hack. You don't need better time management or optimized routines. You need space. You need silence. You need to feel again. You need to remember what it's like to be with yourself without needing to escape, to think your own thoughts instead of consuming someone else's, to feel your own emotions instead of being entertained by fictional ones. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. The fact is this: you are more than a consumer of pleasure. You are more than a user of entertainment. You are more than a collection of conditioned responses to digital stimuli. But you'll only discover who that person is when you stop running from them. The silence you've been avoiding isn't empty. It's full of everything you've been missing while you were looking elsewhere. Your authentic self is waiting in that silence. Your real desires are hidden in that boredom. Your actual purpose lives in that discomfort you keep medicating away. Huxley didn't warn us about pain. He warned us about comfort. A world where pleasure sedates thought, where silence feels dangerous, and where the prison is so pleasant, we never dream of escape. But the bars aren't iron, they're glass. And the key isn't hidden, it's in your pocket. You just forgot your phone wasn't freedom, it was your leash. Put it down, and in the stillness you've been avoiding, you'll finally hear the voice that was drowned out all along, your own. In the comments, name the one pleasure you'll sit with without medicating this week. Because this conversation isn't just about understanding Huxley's warning, it's about deciding whether you're ready to break free from the most comfortable prison ever built.